Welcome back, my nomads. Welcome back to another Bitcast. It's been a while. I'm back here with Zach. What's good, Zach?
Hey man, how you doing? It's been 3, 4 weeks, something like that.
Man, been crazy busy, and I still feel like my brain is fried. So it's like craziness, man.
Code
Crazy.
speak for some Diddy stuff, huh?
No, not at all. Been fried
Well,
with freelance projects.
there you go. See, that's always a good thing. Well, I figured, we got some. I know we weren't really prepared to do anything today, but I figured, there's some stuff going on. We got the ensemble of the Diddy thing continues. We got election day tomorrow. I feel like it's just been like the longest but quickest 3 or 4 weeks ever in terms. I feel like this election season's just been so bad, like it is every time, and we just remember, like, you know what? We're glad that November 6th should be a holiday too, just to get over the fact that November 5th happened.
Amen to that. Amen. Oh my gosh. Amen to that.
So
I'm surprised it's not.
let's start with J Lo and her,
Mm-hmm.
little teary on moment about endorsing Kamala and the 30 minutes about how Trump is evil and Hitler and all this stuff, right?
Full disclosure, for these 3 to 4 weeks, I have been like so busy and living under a rock. You might have to.
No worries. But I'm sure you've seen this, right? Where
No, I,
she's.
I, I didn't hear
All right,
about
so
this at
she had a
all.
nice little teary speech about endorsing Kamala, and it's pretty much,
Uh-huh.
against Trump. My problem that I have with this is we go on 30 minutes tirade about Trump, and I'm like, where have you been with this whole Diddy thing since she dated him for a little bit? And there's been nothing from her, right? But then she wants
Right.
to cast stones into the Trump house when I feel like she shouldn't anyway. So what do you think? I mean, besides the double standards that Hollywood's just constantly in anyway, I mean, this is just another one.
So, yeah, I haven't heard about this, but I agree. From day one of this whole Diddy thing, I was like, oh, brother, can't wait to hear J-Lo's, stories. Because I don't know if you know that much about J Lo. Is she started out as a dancer? That's it, as a dancer
Mm-hmm.
on Wildin'. I mean, not Wildin' Out on it in Living Color.
What a typo. Freudian slip. Tell me
I
what you
know,
really think.
dude. Because there's some stories about her. Um,
Yeah.
but like yeah, like she was a dancer. Then she became like this pop star, and it's known that she never sung her own songs. It was always a number of different females between Christina Milian, Ashanti, to name a few.
Mm-hmm.
So she's can't sing, never sung, and don't nobody come at me in the comments because this is known. All right,
Mm-hmm.
try and go see J Lo in concert. She just announced not too long ago that she canceled her concert due to low ticket sales. Um, so I mean her tour. So I've been like, yo, I want to know what she got to say because there are so many not so nice stories about her in the industry that J Lo and Diddy kind of fit. Like I kind of saw them as a couple, and then they broke up and so I'm like, where's that? And she's been very quiet. Besides her whole like Ben Affleck stuff, she's been very quiet. And like you said, the first time we hear from her is to endorse Kamala. And I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing this happened after the whole Tony Hinchcliffe joke about Puerto Rico.
Yeah, this happened a couple days ago. So this was, I feel like, in spite of.
Yeah, so I'm like, you should probably be quiet. I'm
So
not saying
your
she
your
can't.
cave that you've been in isn't that deep then. So you've heard some things.
I've heard like 5 minute clip things, so I don't consider that like real
But we're not
research or
talking
anything
about
like that.
Taliban leader living in the middle of, like, the cave type of thing for, 4.5 months.
Oh no. I still gotta go to the bathroom, and that's when I watch some videos and stuff. but, but yeah, like I heard a lot of Puerto Rican celebrities endorsed her.
Bad Bunny.
Harris, Bad Bunny. I don't even know why he's a thing. Anyway, for some reason Hollywood is really trying to make Bad Bunny the guy over here. Like they were gonna do a whole Spider Verse spinoff with him, and that fell through. And then he started showing up in movies every once in a while, and now he's like, it was like news I saw at the gym. I was at the gym, and I saw news. Bad Bunny endorses. I'm like, first of all, you a grown ass man, dog. Why you call yourself Bad Bunny? Maybe it's a translation thing because he's Spanish, but I'm like, come
But
on,
you know
bro.
how this is, right? Because it's these guys are all in their bubble and they think they're just being virtuous in some
Progressive or
way,
something.
and
Mm-hmm.
literally half of the Hispanic population in America is on Trump. So it's like, all right, you got to remember, Michael Jordan said it best: Republicans buy shoes too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, I feel like people are just going down this whole. Well, they've just that's what it's been. And look, celebrity endorsements isn't really worth what it has been in the past anyway. You know, so it's not like
No,
it
it's
really
not.
matters all that much. But it just turns into it's just a double standard. It's hypocrisy. It's all this other stuff, right? Of everything they stand for, have done, they go ahead and they endorse someone. It's like, and it just conflicts. So it's just, yes,
I'm. I mean, besides like, and I feel like on both sides, both Democrat and Republican, a lot of these celebrities, I'm like, why you? Like, maybe it's because I'm older and I have social media, but I'm like,
yeah.
why this person? Like, you couldn't have got
I
anybody better.
I just well, it's because the people who are better just kind of stay out of it, right?
That's
It's
true.
like, and you got to be smart. It's like, look, I may feel one way. It doesn't mean that I got to go ahead and have to alienate my fan base for it. And it's one of those things where a lot of people don't know how to express support without coming across as some kind of virtuous, like a signal caller, for lack of a better word. And it alienates people, and it makes them feel like they don't know anything. Like J Lo is worth how much money? Like she's been married how many times, or engaged, and it comes down to, okay, fine, whatever. And how are we gonna how can we take her seriously when she has been mom on the Diddy thing? Because that's some pretty serious stuff.
I know, you might be more versed in this than I, but is it possible that she is in the middle of like litigation or something like that with the trial, so she can't say anything? And even if
Mm,
she was, wouldn't she just be like, "Look, guys, public announcement, I can't say anything. That's why I'm not saying anything." Type of video or something. Couldn't she do that?
that's
Because
unheard
this
of
looked,
unless she has like a gag order,
uh,
which she might have.
uh,
But
because
once
this
he
is like
gets
a federal
convicted, it
case,
doesn't
isn't
matter
it?
at that point, right? Because what she knows could be
Isn't Diddy a
part of.
federal case?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that right now, like, she might have signed an NDA or a gag order of some kind to even talk about it, when they broke up.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. But I thought Cassie did the same thing,
yeah,
but
she
she
just
came out with a
she was
lawsuit.
willing to take the penalty for it by getting sued.
Yeah, she actually came out on top, which is crazy. But
So who
yeah,
knows? It's
I
just
mean,
it comes across as insincere. It's just very and that's what you have a fair amount of people saying that. So it's an insincere thing, and it's nothing like Hollywood hasn't done or said before, and it's like blah 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 blah, and so on and so forth. It's just
well, I mean, not to be that guy, but it's like it's J Lo. Like, is anything genuine with her?
no, there's nothing genuine. No,
She doesn't seem like she's on planet Earth. Is what I'm trying to say. It never seems like she is,
she's been famous
which
for a
is
very
why I'm
long
like,
time, so it's kind of tough to even. It's tough too, and I feel like when you're in a situation like that, you have to understand something. How you feel and how every other person who may be part of the same ethnic type of background as you, there is no relation other than that you have shared. you know. So
And
it
I
just comes across as fraudulent, you know. It's like, all right, so and then when she went on her rant for 30 minutes, it's the same talking points with everyone else. It's like, okay, so what do you have what are you trying to push to make it seem like it's anything good? Like, what's the actual agenda? What's things that you agree with? What are things that you want? And it's none of that. It's not substance. It's kind of like sparklers at a 4th of July event, right? You get the fireworks in the background, and people are showing you, well, I got these sparklers as a, you know, I'm like, I don't really care, you know, it doesn't do me any good.
I got these sparklers. Yeah, I don't, because she's never really been a person, to my knowledge, who's really been like, let's fight for this cause, let's do this cause.
Precisely.
So
So
it's
people are
kind
coming
of
out of
like
the woodwork
left
for the
field.
first time for that,
Yeah, I
and they're
mean, we got
paid. They're
Bad
paid
Bunny. I mean,
endorsements. They're paid endorsements, right? Like, let's be real, they're paid. Like, she's getting paid for it. Beyonce was paid. Everyone's paid. So let's just keep that for what it's worth. Like,
yeah,
I'm
ladies and
not.
gentlemen, both sides are paid endorsements. I mean, Elon Musk has like a sweepstakes to pay millions of dollars to vote for Trump. Like this is what this is what happens, you know. So when you see somebody endorse somebody, just know
Well, as a
there's money in their
correction, it's
pocket.
not to vote for Trump. It's to sign a petition for freedom of speech and right to bear arms. So the reason why I know that's because they're in swing states, and I live in a swing state that happens. So it's Nevada, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, states like that, right, where it's deemed a swing state. And I saw it. I was like, oh, it's fascinating because some lady out here, out in the middle, Pahrump won $1 million for it, and so I kind of looked into it. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But no, you're right. It's
Yeah,
like anything else. It's a way to grab attention and to get people on your side. It's not anything different, right? That's just a very effective way of doing it. When you got a guy that's worth $300 billion, he can just throw $1 million out. It doesn't really matter, right?
exactly,
All right.
exactly. So
Well, enough of
yeah,
that. My head's starting to hurt talking about JLo anyway. Most I've ever done in my life.
yeah, she's still on
Let's
my screen. I'm like, yo, she's still talking. I've never heard her talk this long. Like Jesus.
let's talk about some Dragon Age, man. So Dragon Age, believe it or not, had the largest
Mhm.
launch ever on Steam, but the ratings are abysmal. Like bad.
Oh my gosh. Like I
Why
saw
are
the
we not
trailer.
surprised?
Well, I'll just say from a first glance, I saw the trailer. It looks strange. Like their art direction, I wasn't jiving with it. You know, they changed how it
Not like
looked so
Vanguard.
much.
Vanguard was good, right?
Right, right. I mean, Origins was amazing. Even though at the time Origins, the graphics looked dated, you know, even when it came out, it was still a phenomenally written piece of work. Like it was great. The second one, you know, it was rushed, but it was still fun. You know, the third one was still good too. Like then they did like a whole pivot to where it just seems glossy pop video game
I get
stuff,
what you're
like
saying.
Avengers type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And
It's
so
like
like
wax
even
models running around.
yeah, you remember the Kunari
Yeah.
from Dragon Age? They made them look so different. Like it's I was like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Like it, it looks so weird. It's I don't know. It's just strange because the Kunari were like badass, like a badass race, and then they changed them to make them look dweebish almost. And these like look at the Kunari and what was it, Dragon Age 2? Yeah, compared to the compared to how they look now. Like
It's a little
what?
wild. It's a big forehead.
It's almost as much as how the Klingons changed in Star Trek lore for so much, but it's like, bro.
I mean, we already know why they went there.
I mean, yeah, we know why. It's like we're beating a dead horse at this point, and I just don't understand the reasoning. Like they're still going in this direction. It's like studios don't learn from their
Because money's made.
mistakes.
just because they're making a lot of money, how long can they keep player retention? Who's going to buy the DLCs? Who's going to be playing 3 months from now? And I will give you a great example of what happened with a game that had such great promise and a lot of money spent on all that. Helldivers 2 was phenomenal, and then the player
Mm.
count just dropped because the community didn't do a good job managing the Discord channels, all the social stuff, because they were really hammering on what people can and can't say and stuff like that. And it really just killed the vibe of the community as a whole. There was no camaraderie. There was no like interesting stuff. And then they had to start giving away free stuff for people to come back, and that didn't work either.
I
So here
think
they are.
Space Marines 2 really hurt them too. I
Yeah,
feel like it
but
came.
even before Space Marine came out, they were already
Mhm.
suffering this for like a month or two before that, right? But Space Marine kind of killed a lot of things, and you see how
Mhm.
they're handling this stuff. They're very good with lip service for their fan
Mhm.
base. They know their fan base, they're sticking with it, and they're inviting a lot of people in. And it's a really fun game, dude. And the roadmap they have is very transparent. They plan on doing it as, there's not going to be delays or anything. They're very organized. So this is exactly something you can keep the player base engaged, especially when at launch the content's limited.
Right. Right. And like it's a game that stays true to the lore. It's like not Ultramarine, but 40K is very dense. It has very dense lore and very specific lore. It's not necessarily commercial yet. It's starting to. I forgot who, but they acquired it and they're changing it the lore now, and fans aren't too happy about it. Like they have female Astartes now or something like that. But
That's
like it's
that's
very
that's going to change. That has to
yeah, and
change.
it's like very dense, so it knows who its audience is, like you said, and it's catering to it. And more people are coming to it because it makes you feel like Xbox 360 area where you could say anything online and you would just have these gut punching like kill moves and games and just you're just blasting and having fun basically.
Listen,
You're not being
our
preached to.
our generation dealt with Modern Warfare public lobby
Yeah.
and the insane stuff people would say.
And maybe that's why our generation is not soft. Just saying.
Well,
Just saying.
we started. There's a good portion that is soft that kind of deviated and started doing its own thing, but we're staying resilient, and I think it's
Mm.
kind of passing along. Um, Here's the thing: at the end of the day, this is a AAA game, meaning that it's got the funds, it's got the marketing, it's got all the stuff to make its investment back and more. But does that mean it's success just because shareholders are happy? No, because like I said, DLCs, planned content, all this stuff later on down the road, who's going to engage with it?
Did you see that I saw this? They just announced they are not doing any planned DLCs or anything later. They're concentrating on Mass Effect 5, all their resources. They're done with Veilguard.
They did that on purpose. You know this,
It's
right?
kind of smart. It's kind of
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah. They already know. They already saw the writing on the wall. They're like, oh man, a trans orc. Who really wants to talk about that? Like stuff like that. It's I'm not going to get into it because it's not what we're talking about today, but it's the same stuff. It's the same agonizing, mind numbing thing where you're just going to just put whatever in to identify with as many people as possible in lieu of good storytelling and really good lore. That's
I
all
tell
there
you what,
is.
I hear more about people playing in the character creator for like 7 hours instead of actually playing the game. Like, this is great. I'm like, I'm seeing all these reviews about the character creator. I'm like, what about the game?
It
Did you not
sucks.
play the game yet?
That's all.
Okay, you can
Are you
create
worried
whatever you
about Mass
want.
Effect?
Yes, I
Me
am.
too.
I'm about to go back and play the third one again to finish
I'm
it
worried
up.
too.
Cause and I might play Andromeda and be like, you know what, this is not too bad.
It's not that bad.
Kind of like when the Star Wars sequels came out. You go back and watch the prequels. You're like, you know, it's not that bad.
It's because we just continuously just get like just this crap, and you're like, you know what? Let's go back to what we thought was crap. And you're like, and that's how you do it, right? Because in the future, then we're going to look at episode 7, 8, 9. You're like, it's not that bad when the new stuff is like, what is this?
Oh my gosh. I mean, would you rather watch the Star Wars sequels or the Star Wars live action like Ahsoka and Kenobi and stuff? Like
I like cause see Kenobi's good on certain parts. Like I like Kenobi, but the other stuff is garbage.
anytime Vader or Kenobi was on screen together, that's when it was good. Everything else, ah,
It just didn't matter,
ah.
right? It just didn't. The Leia thing was kind of stupid. That made no sense.
It was hella dumb. Made no
The
sense
relationship
whatsoever.
between Kobe and Vader was that that's the only thing people cared about. Why that wasn't the main thing every single time made no sense to me.
Yes, yes. Like the Inquisitors were a non-factor whatsoever.
Which they need to be, which I
I
don't
know.
understand, right? Because they're supposed to be. That's the whole point. Like, how are you getting the rest? Anyway, we're not talking about that either. But
I know.
the point is, Dragon
Mm.
Age bad reviews, and they're making a lot of money. So it's up to you. You want to spend $70 on a bad game? Be my guest. It sounds like Dragon Age is the game for you.
Yeah, you want to spend
Moo.
$70 on a character creator.
Okay.
like,
I mean, I could do
like
that
these
in.
character creators are getting so so intricate now. I just pick a preset and turn them black and then play
Cyberpunk
the
was
game.
great for me on that. I mean, I can even pick my.
Cyberpunk, come on, bro.
Uh,
It didn't even matter because you never saw your character. Come on.
I mean, I can make my character dick size a certain way, so that's cool.
And you never see it anyway, so it doesn't
Never saw
matter.
it anyway.
You
Yeah, who
don't even see
cares?
the
I don't
bulge.
care if I got an elephant trunk. I didn't even use it or see it. Who cares? All right, moving on. So we talked a little bit offline about this particular thing, and this is about how podcasting and alternative media is just kind of taken everything by storm. And I think people who don't typically listen to the Rogans, the PBDs, the Theo Vons of the world, you see now, especially in this election cycle, how important it is and how they're tapping in to these type of guys. And I mean, we've kind of known for a long time that it was important, but we're at a place now, dude, that for better or worse, man, it's I legacy media I think is done now at this point. Like no one takes it seriously anyway because they've obviously outright lie about things at this point, and they wonder why no one takes them seriously. So they go to these alternative platforms, right? Which I can't even say we say alternative. Joe Rogan gets 30 million listeners, and that's more than all of the legacy media nightly news combined. So can we say that's alternative?
So I have 2 points. Point one, this is like legacy media killed itself by not
Yes.
being honest, by playing with the audience and trying to tell them how to think and lying to
Especially with
them.
COVID.
Yes. That
And then
was
the
that
Trump,
was like
and then the whole Trump thing after a while was like blah 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 blah. I'm like, guys, half the stuff you're pushing is fake, and it was verified. But the COVID thing, I think, is what really just was the kill shot for it.
second, alternative media is becoming the new legacy media because
Well, there's more money in it now too.
I'm seeing all these guys and gals who are alternative media. Now they're dressing a little nicer. You know, they're they're like, I mean, the flagrant. I like flagrant podcasts, and Andrew Schultz in them, but they're like the male view. You know, they're like Alex Media is Whoopi Goldberg, and like they got this like setup that looks all grand, and they got their sponsors and their ads. And
Male
yes,
view. That's a very good way of putting it. It's so true,
I
though.
can't even claim that I saw that in one of the comments, but when they
Oh,
said
I
it, I was
thought you
like, "That's
saw
so
that. I'm like,
true,"
dang, that was
you
genius
know.
of you.
But yeah, like they got their sponsors. They're dressing all snazzy. You're frozen. Hopefully, you come back. But yeah, like they're dressing all fancy and everything. They got their sponsors, and oh, are you back?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah, he's
broke up
back.
for just a second. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just saying like they're the new legacy media because they're also getting these interviews with these people, but they're also getting notes from the PR of that person saying you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. Well, first of all, we went to the alternative media because you were asking the questions that no one else was asking and you were getting the answer no one else was getting, but now you're just doing the same thing as legacy media. So where do we go from here? Who's going to be the next alternative media for us to turn
There
to?
isn't one. I mean, and to
Currently,
be
not
granted,
now.
I think the big ones are still true to the roots,
Mm. The
which
big
is good,
ones.
right? Yeah, like Joe Rogan, guys, Theo Von, guys like that, right? They talk about whatever. And here's the thing, right? Like, say what you want about all of them, and say what you will, but Trump's been on all of them, and this guy is going out and he's doing his thing and talking to them, and it's very difficult questions on some of the stuff, and I get a ton amount of respect for him on that, and that's difficult, right? Because you don't know what's going to be asked. And I think he kind of invites that and he likes that type of thing anyway, where, you know what, catch me off guard and I'll just ramble and weave for 20 minutes and get to my point, and then we start talking about something else anyway, right?
Well, that's his strength, right? That's his thing. He likes to go off the cuff, and
He's
he's
always
good
been
at
like
playing
that.
it.
He's
Yeah,
been
he's
like
always
that
been.
for
He's an
50
entertainer.
years.
He's an entertainer at his core. So he can just riff and go off and stuff like that. I feel like if he were reading from a script, we'd know, and it would come off like, "Yo,
This is
bro, come on."
disingenuous. This is not him. We
Yeah,
can't believe it.
exactly.
His
So
teleprompter is probably just like the first three lines or like something, and then it's just ramble, 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 ramble for the rest of it, right?
right, like bullet points. Talk about this. Talk about that. Talk about how you had the greatest turnout all your rallies. Just talk about that. Talk about how you're basically honest. Go ahead. Talk about that.
That was funny when he said that.
And
Basically,
Andrew
I'm
Schultz,
basically an honest person. They're like, what is that you?
they just laughed right in front of his face. So by definition, you're a liar. If you're basically an honest person, you're a liar.
Everyone's
Which
a
is okay.
liar.
We're
You
all
know
liars.
this.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's what I said. It's okay. We're all
We're
liars.
basically honest people.
Yeah. My wife's like, "Does this make me look fat?" It's like, how do you know? You're the same size when I first met you.
Lies.
I love you, baby. I love you, baby. But hey, I'm not the same size when we first met, so it's okay.
I'm
Um,
I tell the truth. And in lieu of me getting executed, I will. No, obviously I've lied about a ton of stuff too. I mean, I'm a recovering addict. Of course I lied. I had to in order for me to survive and do my drugs. But the point is,
right.
here's the thing, dude. Like, I here's the thing. He's not my first choice, but I give him a ton of praise for the fact he did this and Kamala didn't. She just didn't do it. And
Well, that's his strength. It is definitely not her strength. She
what,
needs
her
a
going off
script.
cuff and start answering stuff that she
She needs a script. Unless you get her mad. When she gets mad, she goes into prosecutor mode, and she goes off. Like if you
So,
want good Kamala,
did you listen to the
hit
Joe
her with filth.
Rogan Trump thing?
Fuck no.
All right.
I listened to
The
Trump
reason
in
why
flagrant.
so the
That was
reason
long
why
enough.
it was entertaining was because, or was it when it was JD Vance, one of the two. Anyway, Joe Rogan said that Tim Dillon told him that when Kamala goes on her rants that don't make sense, it's like witch voodoo language when she just speaks in circles.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, oh yeah, it's so true.
And then Trump's just everything's. Oh, we have the best. I got the best people. I got the best. Everything's bigger. Yeah, okay, buddy. Okay, everything's bigger.
He's a
Everything's
salesperson at
best.
heart, dude. I tell you what. I mean, he
I mean,
is.
he's not a good salesperson. The best, the biggest. Like, come on,
That
bro. You
works. That
speaking
stuff works.
hyperbole.
That stuff works.
Maybe on the lamest man, like the Jedi mind trick. This the best, the biggest, the brightest. Hey, I'm not a weak-minded person, so it's not gonna work
So,
with me.
what? But you can't. Here's the thing. I'll give you a correction on that. So, that sounds like that when people who vote for him are weak and fair minded, which isn't exactly fair to say either, right? So
Mm,
it's one of those things. You do this on purpose, and it even works with like the greatest people, right? Like the greatest minds. Give you a great example. I mean, we could even look at how Nazi Germany works. The highest ranking member of the party all had PhDs. They're all smart dudes, and they all bought into this. How? How'd you do it? How'd you get people all buying into it? So it
you
doesn't
meet
matter how
people at
smart.
their base emotions, and
Exactly.
that's what
We're
Trump
emotional
does.
creatures, and you could, and at that moment when you tap into something that outrages you, that strips away all of your titles, that strips away all your intellect, all of this other stuff, and it just makes you this very simple emotional creature, and that's what he taps into. And it works. You don't have to
Mm,
be a fair-minded simple person to buy into it, right? Like immigration may not affect you, but it's going to affect a lot of people, especially where I live, where it affects a lot of people, right? Like you can't drive your
mm,
car without wondering if someone who's going to hit you doesn't have car insurance and how are you going to pay for it? Stuff like that, right? So I would be very careful into kind of how you frame this stuff because look, I've known you a long time. I mean, we've been boys a long time, right? And I've seen you evolve from not caring about this type of thing to now you understand that not caring is just as bad as anything else. And politics doesn't have to just be politics because it doesn't have to be a way of life, but this is how we function as a society. This affects us, right? And it's our culture. Like anytime you go to the movies or a TV show, this reflects how culture is, and politics is a reflection of what we value. That's why we have the people that we have in office. It's flat out. We value the wrong things, and this is what we get. So if we don't want this type of thing in the future, right, we need to start valuing the right things. And how do we do that? Right? We have to start understanding there's 50 states, and there's a lot of people who didn't even finish high school, and they're just trying to figure out how to make money and survive and support their families and stuff, and we got to respect that, right? So I
So what you're getting into is socioeconomics shit, not necessarily politics. How do
it's
you
all the same
change
stuff though.
the
Like
identity of a people, of a country,
so here,
especially in times right now?
why do you think Trump got elected the first time, right? He tapped into something where people felt like they weren't heard because it was status quo. And it took a guy who's a billionaire virtually, who really had no connection or really no way to relate to people in any kind of way, for them to buy into it. And say what you want about the other side, they don't have anyone that taps into it either. Like they find people are disingenuous, and people, and a lot of people working poor and people in the poverty level don't buy into it. Like that's just how it is. And I think we're kind of in this part in our country now where you got to treat each state like it's a country. And, California, New York, the Northeast, like places where you're around, are going to see things a certain view because people are going to be living in places where they connect with other people that are similar in nature. It's just human. It's just human nature, right? You're going to LA not because of anything, but because of the few different industries, and everyone connects because they see they see the world the same way as everyone else does, or they buy into it, right? You don't go in just thinking that way, right? So I think we have to understand. I mean, everyone, like truly everyone, like, look, Nebraska counts, Kansas counts. They're trying to figure out how to do basic things so they're not working for $12 an hour, and how can they afford, rent and all this other stuff, right? And I want to tap into that. I really want to have a what's the best way to put this? I want to have an understanding that people in the coastal areas, that there's more than just a coast. Like me and you grew up in the same area, Delaware. People pretty much stay there their entire lives, and they don't even understand there's a country outside of it. And they're in this small state mentality. You know what I'm talking about, right?
100%.
And
100%.
I've lived all over the country, thankfully. And, I've seen different aspects, and people just stick in their bubble and they just think it works. And everyone else is just going to feel the same way. And they don't. They just don't.
Mm.
I live in a state that it's like literally 50-50 in terms of how people see things. And it doesn't really, I thought it wouldn't work, but it does somehow. And I just invite you to kind of start exploring that more as you kind of start understanding, since you've been red pilled, so to speak, not in terms of ideology, but just in terms of you understand that politics and voting is important now. When you start traveling and understanding stuff, that there's a lot more different people than just people in Delaware, right?
Oh, 100%. I just don't like the I just had a brain fart. I don't like
That's why
the
I was rambling, dude. I was like, man, I don't know if it's all the drugs I've done, bad brain, whatever it is, but
I
it's
don't like the
tough.
double standards. That's the double standards I've been seeing with um, people criticizing Kamala for certain things. But I'm like, Trump's doing the same thing. You're just letting him get away with it for whatever reason. Maybe you don't want a woman president. Maybe you just don't like her. Maybe you just don't like the left. Whatever. I see her. She's not able to get away with certain things that Trump is able to has been getting away with.
Trump
And
hasn't
I'm
been
like,
able to get
look,
away with a lot of stuff, though, as a whole. Like, he just doesn't. He gets attacked, and it's very apparent how he is covered versus she is. And you can't tell me up until 3 months ago, before she even started running, she was the least popular VP in the history of the United States with a 19% approval rating, and now you got half the country voting for her.
I don't know, man, because I feel the temperature is not so good on her. Maybe it's because I'm a minority and I'm seeing on this side of the street like there's so much hate for her. I'm seeing it
You
like,
don't think it's justified?
and I
Because
some
there's a lot of
yes,
people,
some
there's
no.
there's a lot of minorities that are throwing hate on her, so it's not just white people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Okay.
And I'm like, is it? And I'm like, do you just not want a woman present? Because believe it or not, people of color are a lot more conservative than they want everybody else to know or everybody else thinks
Well,
they
of
are.
course, dude. Like, they were
A
the last
lot
ones to
more
buy
conservative.
into the whole, the gay rights stuff and everything else. But like, as a whole, immigrants from other countries are conservative because of where they come from. Like, that just goes without saying.
Exactly. We are
However,
both sons of immigrants, and so we know.
exactly,
So it's like,
100%. See, my family came from the Soviet Union and communism, and there was a reason why they
mm,
ran away.
mm,
So the things that people are inviting in because of the fringe left is exactly why they ran away to begin with, and they were being hunted. So I understand, and look, I completely understand why people would not want Trump. Right? I get it. I completely 100% get it. He's obnoxious. He's annoying. Blah 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 blah. But we had 4 years of policy that was sound, and we have someone who's never been elected in any office she's ever been in, and she finds a way to get in. And now the only thing that I'm being told because I don't like her is because I'm a misogynist or a racist. I'm not buying that. There's no tangible substance with her, and she's boring. Anytime she does anything off scripted, she rambles and she never answers anything. And I can feel more confident with a guy like Trump talking to the CCP or Putin or whoever to strong arm him in terms of foreign policy, where it prevents conflicts from happening. And I've been in these conflicts, dude. I've been in really bad. I've been in places that were it was a waste of time, and we spent resources and energy and all this stuff. And I saw a lot of people die for no reason. And I trust that Trump could do a better job than she can with that. I just do. And the
I
people
don't think
that
so.
are and the people that are endorsing her were the very ones that fabricated that the weapons of mass destruction exist in Iraq, and they never did. They never did. And we had thousands of people die. Americans die for what? And countless hundreds of thousands of Iraqis die for what? You know? And I'm not okay with that. I refuse to vote for someone who has so many people in place to where she's never won anything elected. When she was a senator, she was picked by the governor to replace someone's seat, and then she became the running mate for Biden. And now she's running, and she was not even picked as a primary. If she was in the primary race, she would have gotten over. She would have been picked over by Newsom or anyone else. Don't tell me she's a woman thing, because Hillary Clinton slashed and destroyed everyone in this 15 and 16 primary. It's the problem is, at the end of the day, right, is that you can't just jump to, just because she is a woman or someone of color, that people are automatically going to jump to that and they don't like her because of that. It's because her policies suck. And you got to understand, why do they think they suck, right? Now, I'm curious to think, someone like you, you're kind of getting into this, especially someone who's minority, immigrant, all this stuff, right? Like, what makes you think, for someone like her, do you think her pitches to the minority minority demographics as a whole is actually working, or do you think it's just kind of playing, staying face and playing lip service, just for the fact that she's a minority, that minorities got to vote for?
Well, for one, I think this election is a joke, and I don't like any of the candidates, her or him. That being said, to piggyback on what you said before, would I want him negotiating war policies with other diplomats across the world? No. When I looked at what I did see from Trump, I did watch the full flagrant interview, and I watched bits and pieces of other interviews with him on podcasts. From what I saw is, people label him a racist, and I don't think he's racist. What I've seen from those interviews, I've seen a guy who's just a people pleaser who wants to kiss everybody's ass because he wants to be praised. So, would I want the prosecutor?
Egomaniac.
Egomaniac. Would I want a prosecutor negotiating policy, or would I want a people pleaser to negotiate policy? I would lean
Was
more
she
to
a
the
successful
prosecutor.
prosecutor, though?
Yes. Now,
What's
you said
success to you?
what's
Imprisoning black
success
men
to
for
me?
weed, over 3,000 black men for weed
Oh,
who are
come
still
on,
in
come on. That's
prison?
hyperbole. Let's get over that. That
Well,
Look at
how's
the
it hyperbole?
statistics. That's hyperbole. And
Is
I'm not
it?
even going to get into that. I checked that out when she was getting
Or three
elected.
strike law? Do you believe that three strike law? Because it's only in California, right? Three strike law. A lot of people don't believe in that either. But she prosecuted on the base of that too, and it's disproportionate to minority communities.
To my understanding, that policy was pushed towards basically by minorities, because both the red and blue and the minorities themselves wanted that to get in place to fight the war on drugs. Now,
100%. But so here, I agree with, because we already know the war on drugs was for the minority communities, right? And that was a Nixon admin type of thing. However, we already
yeah,
know
who
there's a
flooded
huge
the drugs
shift.
into the community?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, and we already knew that going in, right? I mean, he even admitted that on his tapes. He has said that when he was recording himself, right? Um, the thing is, now Trump is not a normal Republican or conservative or any of that, and she's not a typical liberal. She's not. Like, there's been a complete party shift, that how I vote now, I would be a Democrat in the 90s. I just would,
Right.
and that's just a wild thing. And I haven't just I voted for Democrats, since I've been able to vote. Like, I go back and forth. It's not like it's something I'm hell bent on. However, we have to look at it where anytime someone asks what her achievements are, everyone gives me a blank stare. She hasn't done anything. She hasn't.
What was Trump's achievements before he was president?
Well, let's see. He was the first president to go into North Korea and establish
I
peace
said
within North Korea.
before president. What was his achievements before he was president? Before he was
He
elected
was
president?
never in office. But she is running based on her credentials as a politician, which she doesn't have any. That's
All
the
I hear her
difference.
talk about is when she was a prosecutor.
She never did anything as a prosecutor. She just threw people in jail for half the time they shouldn't have. That's the thing. Now, given we can start making
Hyperbole.
arguments about how California laws are broken, right? However, she can't when she says she's for the basis of minority people, when she disproportionately prosecuted minority communities to longer sentences than white people, what does that say?
Ho 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 ho. Hyperbole. And when I say that, I'm saying she was a prosecutor. She was a prosecutor for, you're saying, for weed and narcotics, who mainly was disproportionately targeted for those crimes. So of course she's going to prosecute people who are black and brown.
I'm not following. So how is she a defender or an arbiter for justice for the minority communities then? When she had an opportunity not to push those crimes. And I can even go a step further now, where all the riots that happened because of George Floyd, or all the cashless bails and all the stuff that happens now for people that get, you have armed robbery or class B felonies or below, can get out without having a cashless bail. Why wasn't that a thing then?
Well, I don't know all about that stuff
Well, you
because
see, you're
I'm a
telling me
film
it's
guy. I don't care about.
hyperbole, but
It is hyperbole.
I'm giving you a full example of what happens now and then. And I feel like there's plenty of discretion now about when people prosecute people for crimes, but they weren't doing it then for the sake of black and brown people, right? So all I'm saying is that the talking points that you're telling me about the hyperbole is the same stuff that everyone else does to defend her. And I'm just saying, just keep an open
And you're
mind
saying
with
the
it,
same
right?
stuff to people who want to go against her. Oh, she just put black people in jail. Come on now.
Well, she hasn't done anything even as a senator. She was never even elected as a senator. This is what it comes down to. Like, she's been purely based on the fact that she is a minority woman, which is why she's in what she's in. That's just how it is.
Well, I agree with that, but I'm saying
How
there's
many other
clearly a double
people? How
standard.
many people do you think are more qualified to run than she is right now in the Democratic Party? I can name four or five.
Plenty, just like there's plenty who's way better than Donald Trump.
I don't think there's anyone in the Republican Party as of right now that can beat him on policy.
He has policy besides Project 2025.
That wasn't even written by him, and he's already said multiple times. See, this is exactly what I'm saying. He's never even supported it, and that's written by a far fringe right group that writes that every 4 years. So hoping that a Republican nominee would pick it up if they become president, but he's
So
never
what
even been
about his
associated with
policy
that.
to give cops full immunity?
For what, in terms of shooting someone, or
Full immunity all the way, no matter what.
here's my thing, and this might be unpopular. I feel like I'm okay for it for the most part in this circumstance. I feel like if you can't do your job correctly, especially when you have the power to take someone's life or if your life's on the line, you need to understand that there can't be repercussions for doing something in a split second. And I guess I have a unique perspective given I held a gun and I've had people point guns at me and shoot at me. And I've had to make a determination if it's my life or theirs. Where, yes, you're going to make decisions in a moment where it may be wrong. But is it malicious in that moment in time? That's the thing where you need to have the burden of proof on it. And I think 95% of the time, they're doing it for the right reason, right? Now, I'm not saying the 5%, but that's just how we are as a human. Like, we can't do 100% success rate. Even if we're at 99.9% of the time when there's a police encounter with someone else, when someone gets killed, that 0.1% is still way too high. But we can't do anything about that. That's not how we work. Nothing is at 100% for humans. It's never how that works, right?
Then why would he give them 100% immunity if it's not 100%? Shouldn't it be a
Well,
case by case basis?
I mean, it is, but the thing is, like, that's never going to go through anyway because that's a state thing. Like, there's nothing he can do to even pass that. You know what
Then
I
why is
mean?
he putting that off his policy?
You already know why. Let's be real. I mean, it, it, it comes down to people would rather have that with a stricter law enforcement situation we have versus what we have now, right? And I would take a stricter law enforcement with the fact that there's going to be maybe more situations of people getting hurt when they shouldn't have versus then the complete lawlessness that we have currently. You know what I mean? And you you already know this. It's a binary choice. You're going to have to take one with the other. So if you're okay with taking the situation we have now in terms of our society and crime, then yeah, don't vote for him. But if you feel like you're not okay with the fact that crime's risen, then yeah, that's something you're going to have to weigh, right? And
But you said
just because I
it's a
vote for
state.
him,
Mm,
just because I vote for him doesn't mean I agree with 100% of his policy. I've never said that. I don't agree with every single one of his policy, right?
but you said that's a state issue, but he's
That
putting it off as policy.
Yeah,
How
how
can he
many
do that
times
if
does
it's a
anyone
state?
have policy and they can't get it through? I don't see that being a federal thing. There's no way. I don't see how that could be even legally
So you're saying
justified
he's
federally.
lying?
Well, of course, I don't know if he's lying. I don't know if he even knows that he can push that. It's no different than Joe Biden saying, I'm giving you this as an example, not saying what if. It's no different than Joe Biden saying he can forgive student loans, knowing damn well legally he
Oh, we
can't
know
do
that was
that.
bullshit. We knew that was bullshit.
I'm
Well, I
giving
did.
you I'm giving you an example of the bullshit stuff, right? Like that's just one of those things. But I'm not going to take that one instance as a reason for me not to vote for him versus the 20 other things that I prefer him over Kamala, right? And
So if he's lying about that, if he's lying about policy, and you're saying you're not voting for her because she has no policy, how is that any better? If he's lying about policy, then he has no
because I'm
policy.
willing to take the pros with the risks for me.
What
That's
are
how
the
I look
pros?
at it. So I'll give you a couple of pros as an example. The wealth gap was the lowest it's ever been between the richest and the poorest of Americans from 16 to 20 in the last 75 years because of his tax cuts. And that's bona fide truth. I'll give you all these examples and stuff offline. That's fine.
Wasn't
Plus, he
that
already,
trickle down from Obama's term?
no, he already, he cut, he taxed, he cut taxes in 1718, dude. Like that was not from Obama's term at all. A part of it, so I mean I can give you even more, like if you want to go further back, because you already know I went to business school and I went to school to understand all this. We had artificially low inflation rate, rates for as long as we did, which is why the housing is the way it is and inflation, blah blah blah. But I'm not going to get into that. My next thing that I appreciate him, that I like Trump for, besides the border policy, that we've had anywhere from estimated 6 to 20 million migrants coming through the border, which doesn't really affect you East Coasters, but it affects people here where I live. I mean, I like to have a solid border. I like to know who comes into the country and have somewhat of a vetting process so we know if they offer anything or not. I'm all for voter ID. I find it wild that I was able to go to I went to vote and they didn't ask for my ID at all. I found that kind of wild. Like we go to the doctor's office, they ask for ID. We should at least vote with an ID, right? I like his military strategy, and I
He
like his
called he called the military pussies, didn't he?
what?
Wasn't that a whole thing between him and McCain, and he was calling
Oh, he says
the guys who
he
got
likes his
captured
soldiers
pussies
not captured. Yes, yes. Okay, he was being an idiot, but that's just how it is. He's an idiot. He
because he is
says
an idiot.
no, he's not. He just says he said stupid stuff, but this is what I'm saying. I take the pros with the cons, man. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of someone who was in the military and who went out and did stuff, like I understand, like, yeah, that rubs people the wrong way. But majority of the people in the military vote for him, and it's not even close. It's like that is the one demographic that will vote for him for a reason. So if you're willing to take that to the people who are in the military and argue, well, he called all you guys pussies because I like my soldiers not captured. No one really cares who's in the military. You know what I mean? So it's like me, if I went to you, it's like imagine him saying the N word about, black people and stuff, and most of black people didn't care. Am I the one that can say that, man, that's really upsetting? It doesn't affect me. I'm not black. How can I get upset? But if black people aren't upset, how can I possibly be upset? Right? So it's the same thing, right? and I like his economic policy, dude. Like, I'm not for taxing on unrealized gains. I'm definitely not for that at all. So imagine if you had stock and you get taxed on it, even if you don't cash it in. And this can go to any type of property. This could be your house. This could be vintage cars. These could be trading cards. Anything like that. You know, there's just certain things to me, or price gouging in terms of food and stuff, like putting price caps on housing and food. That doesn't Life doesn't work like that either. That wouldn't work. And like I said, we can talk offline, and I can give you all of the studies and everything that I already have for it, and we could go into more detail because I know we were going to be pretty quick on this. But here's the thing: you're an intelligent guy. I love you like my brother because you are. You are the godfather to my son for a reason. I just feel like with some of the stuff that you're saying, you're just reverberating what mainstream media has said about him, and I think you should look further into it. Is all I'm saying
I
before
feel
you
the
make it.
same way about you with Kamala. Because you got to come harder with she locked up black dudes. Because I heard that 1,000 times, and that's bullshit.
I mean, I can if you want, and you know what? Maybe tomorrow we can have a conversation on it, and I can give you
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing I have on it, right? And really, it just
Now,
comes.
again, I'm not endorsing this chick. I think it's a joke that they made her the running mate,
Well, you know
like
why
out
they
of
made her the
nowhere.
running mate, right?
Yeah, I know. They should have
Be,
never had Joe in there from the beginning. Like,
well, it's because she had all the money coming in from the fundraising from Joe Biden, and they weren't going to give that up. But
it's
no,
so dumb.
that
Oh
was
my gosh.
deceptive. Why the Democratic Party isn't more upset with the fact that there wasn't a primary to like have someone actually challenge Trump, because she's not going to beat Trump. She's not. She's not strong enough. The
No,
fact that she's not strong enough to beat him says something. It truly
no.
does. And
And we know why they chose her. And look, man, I don't like. I didn't like the Joe versus Trump 2 at all, and I don't like the Harris versus Trump. I think both sides should have had better candidates, but uh, this is what we're left with, man. Like,
well, we're see, these are two choices, right? Like, we have two choices, and we have to, like I said, right? Like, you're giving me some very plausible reasons as to why someone wouldn't like Trump, and I even acknowledge he's obnoxious and he says stupid things. 100% agree. But his policy, we had 4 years of his policy. His policy was sound, and I appreciated that. We don't know what. And here's the thing: we can go further back. We had 4 years of her policy with Joe Biden. She was in the room. She was the last person in the room every single time. She was the border czar. The thing she was in control over in terms of our government the last 3.5 years, she failed miserably. So even if we don't have to go back to her prosecution thing, we can. She was in control of the border, and that has nothing's gotten better on that. We've let a ton of people in, and there's been
now,
Americans
what would
killed.
you say to someone who said, "But I like"? What would you say to someone who said, "I like Trump. I voted for him before, but I don't like. I like everything, but I don't like how he handled um, COVID. Like, it was a
That's
disaster."
me. That's me. You
Mm.
already know I'm not. You already know this, dude. I even this go around, right before he
Because it
got
was worse for you than it was for me down
even when I
out
got
here.
even before he got shot and all this. I've talked to you before. Like, I'm not a Trump guy. I'm just not. Like, I understand his appeal, and I understand why people like him. Like, I get it. I also know why people don't like him, but I have to be partial in the sense of policy alone, right? Because we're only left with two choices. And if we're looking at the last 4 years and the previous 4 years, it's not even comparable. You know, we had 12% inflation rates at a given time because we had about 35% of the United States currency ever printed was printed during the Biden Harris administration. For what reason? Why do you think we had 12% inflation? And 12% is just an aggregate mean of all of the things combined. And it does not count housing and energy, which was affected even more, which you already know this, right? Rent was insane. Gas prices were
Dude,
nuts. Everything
we
was
talked
expensive.
about this when they announced they were going to do this. Just give checks to people. We was like, this is going to be so bad. And we're seeing it now.
the separation of the division of wealth between the wealthiest Americans and the lowest is the greatest ever. And that stimulus check, while it kept people stabilized for a little while, and they had the most money ever in their bank accounts, when you actually had to pay that back, which is what inflation is, a tax of the future, credit card bills are due. In order for you to combat inflation, what do you have to do? Raise interest rates. How does that affect you? Credit card rates go up. Car payment rates go up. If you have a mortgage, if you're buying a house, that affects you. If you have a variable rate mortgage, that affects you. Every aspect of rates going up. And rates should really only go up when the economy is good and people can afford it. That's why when houses were like 12 grand, rates were 15%, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that's what kept the housing and in the affordable range of people's salaries because the rates were so high. But we had artificially low rates for 15 years, give or take. Well, more like 10 years. I'm sorry. Pretty much from '06 to 16, we had rates at zero or near zero. That was pretty much free money for mortgages, for car loans, for all this stuff. People accumulated a ton of debt. And when it came to rates rising, because we had to, because inflation was so high, not because the economy was good, people had to pay that, but their salaries didn't increase along with it. So it is a compounded effect. We add that with the
Yeah.
poor decision making in terms of how he handled Ukraine and Russia, how they've handled Israel and Gaza and Iran. This is what I'm talking about, dude. Like, look, I'm not a
Well, he
master
has
or
dementia. You can't blame him.
okay, but he's
Yeah,
got Kamala
it's been
he's
a
got
circus,
Kamala
man.
he's got Kamala Harris, which she has said multiple times that she would not change one thing about his policy or his decision making. She has said that verbatim multiple
I
times.
know, and I was
So
like, you
here
just cost yourself
So
the
I'm
election.
coming back along with what her policies and what she's saying. So let's even just scrape. So let me go with the fact that let's not attack her prosecutorial record because the black men. Fine, let's go with her record as vice president. She hasn't done anything. She was 19% approval rating for a reason. That doesn't just happen. Like when Bush's approval rating was at like 15% during the middle of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, that was for no reason. That was for a reason. People did not buy what he was selling. And it's the same with her at the end of the day. She was full responsible. She's number two in charge. So if you're telling me she had nothing to do with Joe Biden's decision making, then I have a lot of beachside property in Saudi Arabia for you, ready to go.
And so this leads me back to my first point. I think both candidates are a joke. I don't think she's going to win. And the reason I don't think she's going to win is because of the years we had back then. See, I think our country goes in ebbs and flows,
Yeah.
and I think Trump was elected for a reason the first time, and then
Yeah.
Biden was elected for a reason the second time. But I
Why do you
think
think why do you think black people Trump is expected to have the largest black vote since 1960 for a Republican president. Running president. Why? Like, what do you see? What do you think is making him gravitate towards that? Especially men. Men, it's like over 50%, by the way. And the only reason
if
why it's as
that's
low as it is because of women. So, what do you think it is?
if that's true,
It is true, by the
I
way.
can only
It's, I mean,
guess. I
he's
can
getting
only
pulled in that.
guess. I think people underestimate tradition. Like when I think it was Megan Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, who was talking to Vivek when he was running for the Republican primary, and she was like, "I won't vote for you because you're Muslim or Indian." She said
Hindu.
Hindu,
That was
and I
her.
think people underestimate the power of tradition. I don't think America is ready for a woman president. I think one of the reasons they fast tracked uh, Kamala
Do you think
Kamala,
America or the minority populations?
I think America as a whole. Some of the rhetoric I hear is just, I'm like, oh, you just don't want a woman president. I think people aren't ready for that.
I, I
And
see. I disagree, but I'm more curious in terms of like black population gravitating towards Trump. Like, what do you think that is? So it's tradition, but there has to be more than that because they were vehemently against him in 2020. What shifted in 4 years?
Well, I think the media killed her, where I saw a lot of rhetoric of like, is she black enough? Is she this? And a lot of reporters would ask her, you know, questions, and she would answer, "Oh, I grew up this. I grew up doing this," and then they would chop it up and paste it. So a lot of people thought she was pandering to the minorities, like, "Oh, I'm black this minute, and then I'm Indian this minute," but really it was the media chopping it up stuff and killing her on it. And then when she got in front of the mics and had long interviews with Shannon Sharp and stuff like that. First of all, you went on an interview with Shannon Sharp. I love, don't get me wrong, get your money, black man. I like Shannon Sharp. He's not a reporter, he's not a good interviewer.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a not so good interviewer tacked in with a candidate who's not good at talking off the cuff. And she
It
couldn't,
was,
from what I
yeah.
heard, she couldn't get Trump out of her mouth for 3 hours. She said
I
basically
watched it,
nothing.
by the way. I watched that whole thing.
Yeah, like I mean, Shannon Sharp, like, come on, Skip, come on. That's all he does for like 3 hours. He just laughs and asks these
Yeah.
off kilter questions. He's not really a good interviewer per se, but that's part of the reason people like his podcast. So it's like you're not really saying anything. You're not going on big enough platforms,
But if she
and
went on Joe Rogan, who's not a Trump guy at all, or Theo Vaughn, like she said no.
apparently it was scheduling conflicts. I don't
We
know
already
why.
know for a second Trump is a busy dude too, and he found time.
Yeah, yeah, he did.
JD
Whoever's
JD
his
Vance
PR
JD
is
Vance is a
doing
busy
a best
guy.
job.
He found time. Everyone, this
Dear
is one
God,
thing about the Trump
that
side,
idiot.
right? Like, regardless how you feel, they did the things they were supposed to get into this point now. The fact that they're even projected to win is because of this stuff. She didn't do
I feel
that.
like Republicans are good for that though. They're good for tapping into the culture
Not
at the
true.
moment.
Not true.
Democrats,
Not at
I
all.
feel like, are more like in a
I think you got
world
it
of their own.
completely wrong. Do you know why they have it in the moment right now? Because Trump completely changed that party. Like he is not a typical Republican at all. And this is the first time that he's tapping into it. And what was it during the Andrew Schultz podcast? He was giving his son credit for this. His son's 19, Barron. He was like, go on this guy, go talk to this guy, go talk to
Right,
this
right.
woman, go on this show, go to this stadium during this football game, do all of these things. And guess what he did? He did it. What did she do? What did her running mate do? He's not busy. He's the governor of Minnesota. He's got plenty of time to do things, and he's not doing it. All right. So, and a couple things, like besides the fact he lied about his military rank, he can't load a shotgun to save his life, and he was in the military. And he says like the weird, like football, like metaphors that don't make sense, even though he's a coach. Like the guy is like so out of his depth in terms of anything. He does not help her, and I feel like she's not tapping into the right places because look, we're not the generation they're tapping into. We're not. It's not millennials. It's Gen Z.
Hmm.
It's the young votes, dude. Like, how are you going to get into it? How are you going to tap into it? And the only way you do that is get on these podcasts. Show the American people that you can talk off cuff for 3 hours without being scripted because you're going to have to do that as the ambassador and the highest ranking officer of the United States of America. You don't have a choice. And if you can't do that without it being scripted, there's a problem. Just flat out. And people read that. Say what you want about Trump, but the guy commands the room. It's all about him for better or worse. And that helps when it comes to that stuff. And she doesn't have that presence. And
No, she
I
don't.
I really think that if it was a Gavin Newsom, if it was a Josh Shapiro, if it was one of those two guys, Trump wouldn't even be in the situation right now. He'd be getting blasted. Truly. I truly
From what I
believe that.
heard, majority of Democrats wanted Gavin Newsom. From what I heard.
he's the worst governor ever, but that guy knows how to debate and he knows how to make any of his policies that were awful sound amazing. He is fantastic at it. Like, I've heard him talk numerous times. Like, I can't stand the guy, but man, that dude is gifted, you know? And I just think, like, look, I'm voting as a whole because I've seen where this whole woke culture goes, and woke is associated with the left, and they're just allowing this stuff to happen. They're perpetrating it. The fact that we in 2024 from 2018, the fact that a man's a woman or a woman could be a man and all this stuff, the fact that there's not absolute truths is insane. This is where our culture is where our culture has gone, and we need to kind of get back to that. Like, look, if we can kind of get back to how it was in terms of civil discourse, in terms of the highest levels of power, then I think we're going to be okay. And I think the fact that alternative media in these podcast settings are truly going to do that, because let's be real, campaign ads really don't do a whole lot. We're going to get a lot less of that. The rhetoric is going to disappear because these guys are going to hold these people honest. There's nothing in it for them not to hold them honest, you know? And I think the best way to do that is like, look, stop talking about Trump. I want to hear what you have to say. If you want to separate yourself from the fact that you're not Trump, what do you bring to the table? So far, she's only talking about how she's not Trump without bringing anything to the table. He wants to get rid of taxation on tips. Within 2 months, she said the same exact thing. Why aren't you doing this stuff now that you're suggesting? This is what I don't understand. Why didn't you do this within the first 3.5 years? When I'm president, I want to cut taxes on Medicare. Why haven't you done it? That's something you guys can do tomorrow if you wanted. This is not an act of Congress to do this. This is where I start breaking down.
Aren't the Republicans majority House seats or something like that?
You don't. Tax code does not belong to Congress. That's an executive decision.
Yeah, you guys lost.
Military, 100%. When they were discharging guys because they refused to take the COVID shot, that was not under Trump. And then they sent letters out saying, if you want to come back,
they discharged guys because they didn't take the COVID shot.
Yes, dishonorable discharge, which is just as bad as being a convicted felon.
Dishonorable discharge for that?
Yes,
bro.
Which, if anyone doesn't know about dishonorable discharge, that's as bad as you being a convicted felon. You can't get VA benefits. You can't apply for jobs. You can't get anything. And they had to wait 3 years to get that reversed. 3 years. The only reason why I know this is because I have friends in the military still, and they knew guys that refused to take it, and they got kicked out, and that's what happened. And I'm like, man, that is some rough stuff, dude. That
being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are not a political podcast. We are a film podcast. I don't know anything about politics. I just watch movies. You know, you got any issues? Talk to Zach, man. He knows all that stuff.
No, I don't. I just go based on my personal preference. Like, look, at the end of the day, I wanted to have this conversation with you for a couple of reasons. One, me and you are best friends, and we disagree on a lot, but we agree on more. And we can do that. People can do that, right? And people don't know how to do that.
I'm not trying to kill you or nothing. Well, then again, I'm not for Harris either. I'm not for Trump or Harris, so I'm not mad at you or anything. This is a circus, man. It's wild, bro. I don't know.
How do you think? So let's just say, I'm curious before we finish this. So Wednesday, what happens next? Do you think? So alternative media podcasts. What do you think? Do you think more people, more than ever, are going to start listening to podcasts? What do you think?
For one, Wednesday, I mean, when they announced Kamala Harris as the running primary, I was like, oh no, Trump's going to win. I knew that from day one. I'm sorry. Argue with me if you want. I'll probably be right on Wednesday. I always knew he was going to win. Now, you said Wednesday. I think, yes, people are going to listen to podcasts. I think that's always been increasing gradually. It might do an uptick after the election, but I think more and more people are just, you know, going to keep going in the same direction to alternative because it's just better. I mean, look at like Stephen Colbert or Conan O'Brien. You get a guest on for maybe 2 minutes. You do a little fluffy, ha ha ha, yeah, laugh, laugh. You know, joke here,
Yeah, yeah,
joke
yeah.
that. I'm so pretty. I'm so
There's no
smart.
substance.
And then they leave. How am I going to get an idea of this person in 2 minutes
Isn't that
with a
wild? That's what
rehearsed
we
interview?
did for like 50 years.
For 50 years, and I'm watching, like, you can watch these. I was watching it recently because I just came from an event yesterday and
Hmm.
they were showing an actors interviews on late night, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all these interviews are the same despite having different hosts. Like, all, even though they had different hosts, the venue looked the same. They all had a band. They
Hmm.
all did a little riff in the beginning. They all had the same kind of interview. I'm like all these guys were the same. Like all these shows were the
Yeah.
same, and all
It's
the
not
puff
nothing's
pieces were the same.
distinctive.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is what we did for years, and
Yeah.
now
It's
we're
broken.
not going to go back.
No.
We're just not.
And it's
We
going to
can get
catch
three
up.
hours with somebody.
These, like, look, we already know this crazy rhetoric and all this stuff, like the attack, basing your policy on the anti version of your opponent is not the winning strategy. And I think we're going to go back to substance. Like, we don't have a choice. We just don't.
Yeah,
And
because
I
now
hope,
people are hip to the rhetoric. You
yeah,
know.
'cause they're like, oh, fine, whatever. I don't care. What do you actually believe in? I need to know this so when I'm voting, I know what I'm voting for, right?
Hmm. Right. Exactly. But yeah, my nomads. Hope you learned something. If you didn't, we didn't really talk about a movie, but whatever. Do what you do. Vote how you want to vote. I still think local voting is more powerful than the federal version, but whatever. Sure. But yeah, be creative, my nomads. Peace. And whether you agree with us or disagree with us or whatever, please vote because
Please.
people died for that right. People still die for that right.
And
You
it's
know.
not guaranteed everywhere else, and we can take advantage of that. Like, that's not.
Exactly.
Yep.
So get off your high horse, get out there and vote. And if you don't vote, you're just being lazy. So okay. So you don't have the right to complain if you don't vote too. So I just want to say that. All right. Peace.